Was it your father who taught you about boat building then?
That's the first experience I had, but I was just a kid at the time.
Did he let you work with him? Or?
Oh, sure, sure. That was in 1910 she was built.
Mm-hmm.
I was only 6, 7 years old, but I remember it well.
What did he have you doing when you were helping?
Oh, holding something or steadying something with the hold hooks, you know, so he could hew and chisel and plane and what a work. That too had a spruce keel cut from a spruce tree with the root made the stem.
All one piece again.
All one piece.
Well, where did your dad learn boat building? Did he?
Well, in the old country, Norway.
He was from Norway.
Yes.
And he built boats in Norway too?
Well, he helped, but he had helpers there too with a fellow by the name of Ed Larson. He was an expert.
When they built the Doris.
That's right.
Well, did his family build boats in Norway? Was that like a family
yes,
tradition?
well, they had to have them, you know. But they used mostly dories there, see.
Dories.
More or less like our skiff. And there again, they were narrower, but they were a one-man boat. We like to have a little square stern on them so that you could hook the motor on, you know.
Now, where in Norway did your dad come from?
Trondheim. That's where they took the Tirpitz, remember?
Yes.
And they took the Norwegians to take her. They swam underwater over there, loaded her up over by the propeller.
Bunch of tough men.
Well, it's peculiar how people could get so belligerent as they were at that time. They're finally, I think, learning how to live together over there, aren't they?
Seems to be.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happening now that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
That's right. I talked to a gal the other day, and she said, what a time. Everybody disagreeable.
Oh, no.
Well, when you think of it, that's why my folks came to this country, was to escape the forced army, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They called it the Exis in Norway, where you had to put in so many years or so much time in the training. Many people left there on account of that.
When did they come over to the United States?
About in 1890.
What were your parents' names?
Lind.
Lind?
Lind, the art that they came from. And my mother's name was Ellen. My dad's name was Dan. They had a big family. 6 boys and 5 girls.
It is a big family.
Yeah, there ain't too many of them left. There's about 5 left. 2 boys and 3 girls. They settled first, of course, in Duluth. They didn't know each other in Norway.
Oh, they didn't?
No, but they had lived only 6 miles apart. But that's where they were from, right across from Trondheim. Nothing but mountains and little pieces of land. And they were trying so hard to get ahead and get enough money to get to America. And they finally succeeded. He came first, but she came to her brother in Duluth, not knowing Dan at all, but they met there.
In Duluth?
Yes, and there they got married.
And they lived so close together and had to come to another country to meet.
That's right, yeah. Then they went to Isle Royal. The first year they fished, this where Leif Erikson Park is in Duluth now. Then they went to Isle Royal, and then the first baby came. That was Johnny. He drowned in Lake Superior. And, but he was 18 at that time. So that went all right. They'd go back and forth by steamboat, you know.
To Isle Royal?
Yes. But they had to take everything with them, including the stove.
They took the stove, too?
Sure. She had to have something to cook on.
Yeah.
Well, in the next year and a half, here comes the other boy. That was David. That's when Mother said, that's enough of this. You're going to find a place. If you're going to fish, you're going to find a place. And she did at Castle Danger. That's by 2 harbors.
Yes.
And there they settled. Where Gooseberry Park is, we were adjacent to that. And my dad bought that homestead right from a guy that had been sent in there to buy it so they could log it. See, you know what he paid for it?
Probably not too much by today's standards.
$5.
$5?
Yeah.
And do you know how much property was there?
27 acres. There was a part of it in Lake Superior, see.
$5 doesn't go as far anymore.
Not quite. But there they built the house, moved into it in about 1901 or 2, and they fished. This one I built in Duluth. That's the first one I made.
The bluefin?
Yeah.
Now, is this would be a gas boat, right?
That's right. That was a good Lake Superior boat. See how it's got clearance there?
Mm-hmm.
And she had about a 7-foot beam. Very seaworthy.
What would go into making a really seaworthy boat? What types of things did you try to include in the design?
Well, the bow should split the wave, for one thing, you know.
Hmm?
It shouldn't go like a scow.
Right, it shouldn't smash into it.
That's right. It should split. The curvature here. The main part of the beam is here, about 1/3 the length of the boat. For example, a 22-footer, this was. 3 times 7 is 21, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, 7-foot beam.
Okay, so 1 to 3 would be the ratio then.
That, up to 35, 40 feet. There, they get bulky if you have them 2/3 or 1/3.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a difference. Now that's very much the design that was used on the Two Brothers, the Seavey, and the Dolphin.
Well, what kind of a transom, what kind of a stern did she have here? I can't really
Oak.
tell from the picture.
It's that's solid oak, and of course it's designed to comparison. You see, set up forms. You set up one here, one here, one here, and the stern piece.
Okay, so like spaced
Then you
about.
nail your straight line that you want on there.
Along the shear.
Yeah, so you know what you're going to have. From there, it's your own to measure.
What was the process then? When you were going to build a boat, how did you start out? Did you use a half model, or did you draw a set of plans?
Well,
or?
you draw out your plans. Yeah, you draw out the measurements. Then you make your forms. You got forms that you make a good boat by. You hang on to them. You know where to place them.
Mm-hmm.
So far from the stem, so far in the center, so far from the stern, and then the stern piece.
It looks like, what, about 1/4 of the way back from the stern, from the bow?
Yeah, yeah.
And then space the other ones
Yeah.
equally, and then have one at the stern.
And that's the way we set up for the CV, and we set up for the, and 2 or 3 other people used those forms. And they done pretty well, but they didn't put them together like we did. They too flimsy.
So once you had a set of good forms, you didn't mind sharing those with somebody else if they wanted to borrow them?
That's right, yeah. And we had many cranks that would come. It looks good to me. And when you get that, then you got it made. And of course, like I say, to shape them so that they'll just take the wave and split it and lift themselves out. But then you got to have that clearance here in the stern.
Where it's kind of upswept there?
So yes, so that she's got a chance to bounce. Now, if that was straight out here, she'd nosedive.
Uh-huh. So what, does that type of stern have a name? Do you call that a counter stern, or?
No, that's the stern piece. And that should be solid oak, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the stem and the keel is oak.
All oak.
All oak. And the ribs.
Ribs are oak too?
By the way, I've got some remnants of this left. This is the way we put the planking in.
Oh, kidney planking.
You can curve it any place you want it, see?
Uh-huh. Sure, it holds there real good.
Yeah, then you nail through here. Then you rivet about 8 inches apart. Steam rib.
All your pieces you try to steam rather than saw
Oh,
shape?
yes, absolutely steam. Saw rib is no good. It'll break with the, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a job to rib them. Nail and then clinch on the inside. But it goes good if you got the right steam box, you know, and the right cooker. You got to have the guy that, there's the rib cooker. Put them in, turn them, take them out, turn them, put them back in.
Was that a specialty then, the person who did the steaming, or did you do that yourself?
No, oh, you did that yourself, but
But I mean, that was something that people specialized in.
That's right. You had somebody with you that knew. You knew what you wanted. You could have those if you want.
Yeah, I'd like those, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't want to rip any off the boats for samples,
No.
so this is great.
But that's just a sample. I have a little bit of that left in the shop here yet.
And what kind of wood is this that you
That's
use for the planking?
white pine.
White pine. So you would actually nail the planks together like so, and then put that on
Oh,
the
no.
ribs, or?
No, that would be nailed on one at a time,
Oh, okay.
all the way up here.
So you put one on, attach it, then put the
Yes,
next
and
one on.
if you
then
wanted,
attach
you
it.
put a streak of white paint on them, you can do that.
Nice.
And she'd be tight as a cork when you throw her in the water.
Well, it doesn't look like it would let much leakage through there,
No.
if anything.
No. We were responsible, you might say, for inventing.
Well, I know. I never saw it till I came out here and looked at some of the boats that are out on Isle Royal. Never saw it anyplace else before.
No, and it made them solid as a rock. You know. And boy, when you were out there, sometimes when you'd come up with a good northwester or a southwester, you'd take a pretty good beating. But instead of getting in a hurry to get home, pull the throttle back a little bit, check her down. One guy asked Stanley and me one time, we were having a little conference down there with the engineers, Ralph Knowlton. He said, weren't you guys ever scared out there? Stanley looked at him, he says, scared? You don't know what it means. He says, we were absolutely scared. But that's why we're here. He said, you know, the captain on the Edmund Fitzgerald, he wasn't scared at all. Look where he is.
He should have been scared.
That's right. There's the one my dad built.
Okay.
That was the Doris.
Now is that a Mackinac boat? I see that she's got a mast up in the bow there.
No, it's just a freight, you know. It had a Collenberg engine in it.
Uh-huh.
He hauled, he liked to take the most he'd take was 8 ton.
8 tons.
7 was the load he liked to have.
And was there an engine in here?
A Collenberg 2-cylinder.
I'm sorry, you just told me that.
Yes. And his brother ran the engine.
Okay.
And they stood back here and steered.
Okay.
And that boat was harbor patrol in 2 harbors during the First World War.
Oh.
The government took it over. And they had it in, I think it was 1916, 17, and 18, or somewhere in that area. When the war was over, of course, we got it back.
They pay you any rent for taking it?
Yes. But they caused a lot of damage to it, too.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. And, of course, there was a demand, a big demand, at that time for frozen herring to be shipped to Dakota to the farmers. Now, you know, it's a peculiar thing, but when you look at it, how those people went to Dakota, homesteaders, every one of them. Then people went up the shore there and supplied the food to keep them alive. I remember one year when they shipped around 300 to 400 tons of lake herring to Dakota.
To feed the homesteader.
And you know, they sold them for about $3 a hundred.
Was that considered to be a good price back then?
Paul made big money. He was considered a big businessman in 2 harbors, believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. That's when he bought a team of horses, farm equipment, even a thrashing machine to thrash grain. Work. And we had cows, beautiful big barn that he built from lumber from the old lumber camps that he tore down. And I remember Ole Berg, this captain on the Winya, he'd come and he'd go inside the Gooseberry Reef, come and then he'd turn out for the Castle Danger Reef. One time I asked him, what do you do that for? He said, I always admire looking at that beautiful farm, that nice big red barn, that white house, and the grain field, that yellow grain field. Oh, well, they were very ambitious. Here's the first 3 automobiles in Castle Danger.
Must have been real celebrities having the first 3.
Boy, when we went for a ride, 1915 Rio.
This is great. Now, who are all the people in this picture? I see you got the 3 cars there.
Yeah, well, there are families. My mother is the one here. That's a Model T Ford in the middle there.
Model T, and then what's this one on the left?
That's a Rio.
A Rio.
Rio. And they're both Rios.
Okay.
Both 1915 Rios.
Did you have any preference for type of materials you use, like where you got your wood, or?
Oh, yes. The lumberman would see me come, and I know what he wants. Raffin had the sawmills. Raffin and Quist had sawmills. And they'd cut and they'd season it in a shed, you know. Mm-hmm. And they'd lay aside number 1 clear pine. And that's little more than 3/4 thick. We wanted it that way. So they just surfaced the 1 inch.
Did they do this milling here at the lumber yard?
No, we done that ourselves.
You did your own milling?
Yes. We done that at, he had a shop on the North Shore there too, not far from me. But he made only little racing boats and stuff like that. But he had a machine. He says, I'll rig that up.
Do you remember who that was?
I'm trying to think of the name. But anyway, we had the knives. I had the knives made in 2 harbors in the shop there, the concave and the convex. Why won't that come to me?
Oh, well, if you don't think about it, it probably will. That's the way it works with me.
Yeah.
What about the type of fastenings you use? Did you use galvanized or copper? Or?
Mostly galvanized, yeah.
Did that work out best?
Oh, yes. We used the 6-penny box coated, resin coated, for nailing that together. Then we used galvanized for the ribs. And then you see when you Went over that with the sander outside. Boy, it was slick as a
Oh
whistle.
yeah, like glass.
Yes, sure.
What was the sequence of construction then? You come up with your plan, then you make your forms from your plan.
You'd probably have to make them over more than once
Do you get
to
the
get
right?
just what you want.
Okay, and once you got your forms, how do you set them up?
Well,
You gave me the spacing already.
Yeah, you'd nail a cross piece on the keel.
So you'd set up the keel first.
That's right, and that had to be done right
Hmm.
in order to get the rounding. You just can't run the square out and then square down. You got to lay a piece in there and then another piece, round it all up, and then that's got to be mortised all the way to fit that. See, that's comparatively easy because you just draw a line and use the chisel. Sounds like a couple of woodpeckers working, but
Okay, so you set up your forms then on the keel,
that's right.
and then you said you put the batten along the shear
Yeah, on both sides.
on both sides.
Yeah. And then you put a string so you're sure that you're in the center.
Hmm.
You ain't this one and then that one and that one. There's the center. Then you brace it, roof of the garage, or from those cross ties, so it can't move. We went out there Saturday morning, we were working, we knocked on the door. I said, what do you got here, a box factory? No, boy, he said, that's a beautiful boat you're building. Yeah, I said, that's what I'm doing. Well, he said, you were working pretty late last night, weren't you? Yeah. Well, we had a complaint, he said, from the neighbor, that you had started a box factory here.
A box factory.
Well, I said, we were doing some nailing, that's for sure. That's a beautiful boat. That's all I need to know, he said. So, somebody complained. So I told Stanley, I said, the very next day, this overtime has got to be cut out. He laughed. But we got it done in time anyway.
I've got a couple of questions, if
Sure.
you don't mind answering some. Going back to the construction sequence again, what did you put on first? Once you had the forms all set up, what went on first, the frames or the planking?
Oh, the planking.
Planking first.
Sure. That's what the forms were for,
Oh, okay.
to build by. And you see, you're much wider here than you are from here and down here. So you have to make something like down here on the bottom. Here's your keel now.
Right.
Now, this is a board of its own. It's probably a 6-inch board. You rip that into strips and nail it back on the keel. Now we're almost even from down there to here, as we are from here to here, and as we are from here to here. See?
Mm-hmm.
Then when you start one of them strips, you don't have to bevel either end.
So it's almost sort of like putting together a puzzle on the bottom there.
That's right.
Fitting the pieces together.
That's right. That's right. That's the worst part.
Getting the planking on the bottom.
Yes. From the keel and up about, I'd say 8 to 10 inches here, and nothing here, and nothing there.
Nothing at bow and stern, just 8 to 10 on the sides.
Yeah.
And then once that was done, you could pretty much just lay the strips in.
That's right. That's when Sievertson and them came out that night, and all I had to do was fasten the end up there, and wow.
You already did all the hard work.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it goes, though.
And then you would steam the frames and put them in.
That's right. Step on them. Well, we had a form like a half moon,
Mm-hmm.
Shaped like that, and then it was open in here, so we could clamp, put the clamp here, bend the rib over here, and clamp it for about a minute.
That's right after it came out of the steam box?
That's right, when she was hot. And then, as you went along, you made your adjustment here as you needed it. A little trick to that, too.
So you clamp it for about a minute, then take the clamp off, put it in the boat?
Yep, and it would stay there. If you took it out, it would stay there. The form, I mean the shape.
Yeah, the shape in the...
But you had to work pretty fast. One man drilling inside, and one man outside nailing in, and then the guy who drilling, he'd do the clinching.
So you're drilling from the inside out, and you pound the nail in,
That's
and then
right.
clench it.
Be sure that you hit the rib that way, you see.
Yeah, that makes good sense. What about finishing a boat? You use any particular kind of paint or varnish? Or...
Well, of course, yes, we used varnish on the on what we call the combing, the inside here. Mm-hmm. And otherwise it was a good sealer and good paint, Sherwin-Williams. sometimes with the CV and the Two Brothers, we gave it this copper oleate. That's a wood preservative. It's got copper in it,
Mm-hmm.
green. But yeah, it's harder to get a good tight boat that way if you use too much of that, because it gets in the seams and the paint won't, you know. I mean now that you pull your boat up and let it dry out, then you paint it in the spring, you know, before you throw it in the lake. Otherwise, we didn't use any preservative. The good oak, you know, that lasted.
Did you paint the inside?
Oh yes,
Painted everything then?
yeah. This one here, I used creosote. A guy told me he was a teacher in school. He came down there every day after school and admired the work that was going on, because when I had a little time, I'd go out there and work on that, you know. And Saturday, of course, I'd work on it all day. Sunday, of course, that was a little different. But he was the one that suggested, well, I said, that's what they use on fence posts, ain't it? Crud like that? Yeah, he says, that'll last forever. So I creosoted the inside. I said, why don't you put the outside? No, I said, you got to have some paint on there too, you know. Well, I painted the outside. It never did get dry. That creosote, you know. Now, Mom, she was, because we went up the North Shore the following summer on a vacation with, and all this sticky stuff, sniffing all the time. Well, I'll paint it. I painted it. It wouldn't dry. And what did I do? I took a can of kerosene and a big swab, and I washed it. Boy, did I have a mess. But then the paint stuck.
That did the trick.
That did the trick. Maybe we should discuss skiff building just a little bit.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of building a skiff.
What is it?
It's the starting board. It's that board right there. That's the starting board.
It goes...
It's 6 inches wide, and it's bent. You see, when you bend it, then this becomes straight.
Oh, so that's goes right along the chine there at the
That's
bottom.
right. That's right. Then you put your cross pieces in, and no skiff should be narrower than 42 inches. If they're narrower than that, then they get what we call cranky.
Cranky.
Just to lean over on the side a little bit, and they won't behave. I made one for Sievertson one time, and Art ordered the material, and I told him what to order. Well, he ordered them bottom pieces too short, by about 2 inches. I told him, well, he said, go ahead, build it. We built that down in Duluth, down in the warehouse. Stanley come in one day, and he says, I don't know what you did with that skiff, but he said, she's awfully cranky. Well, I told you.
One thing that I see mentioned a lot, and it seems to change depending on who I'm talking to, is they talk about the types of boats that were being used on Isle Royal and the North Shore. And they talk about herring skiffs and runabouts and gas boats. What are the types that you remember?
What the what?
What types of boats do you remember? What
Well,
were they called?
the shelters where the men operated from were such that they couldn't use a round-bottom boat. You had to have a harbor to anchor them or a dock to tie them to. And you know, if you tied your boat to a dock down on the North Shore, come up with one northeaster and you'd find your boat way out there something. So they had to use a skiff and what we call the slide, cross pieces nailed, so you could hit it and then bail your herring out, and there you have it. Oh, they had to use skiffs there. That's why they were in such demand.
So the skiff was pretty much the one everybody
We
wanted.
were building 2 to 3 to 3 to 4 skiffs every winter.
Well, one last thing I'd like to ask you about. One of the things I'm trying to look at, and I don't know if it's going to turn out to be true or not, is whether there were any, whether the methods of boat building that were used, around Lake Superior and the North Shore, whether that was similar to stuff that was done over in the old country, whether when people came over here they brought the methods or the tools that they knew in Norway and Scandinavia and applied them here.
That's right. That's right. That's what they did. We had Ellingson Old man Ellingson, he was a good one. Ed Larson, he helped my dad. But they were clever with they had their own wooden planes and chisels, and they had, they even had planes that had a rock in them, so they could.
Were those tools that they had in Norway?
Yeah.
And they brought them when they came here?
Some of them brought them with them.
So you think the boats that were being built here were pretty much the same as were built in Norway?
Well, pretty much. And they knew how. The know-how, was the anxiety that I always looked for. I was peeking at them all the time. The way they'd hew or chisel, or they'd take a look, and they tried. Okay. So, very interesting.
You were the one who came up with this idea for this planking?
That's right. We went together with Falk. We figured it out. And, sure.
What made you think of this, to do it this way?
Well, so that you could make a crooked board out of a straight one. You could roll that.
Yeah.
Quite a ways. Except when you come to go around the stern, then we had to split one of them.
Just take one of the top corners off there.
And so we could make the curve.
Right. Did you put a patent on this or anything?
No. We didn't patent it. We made the first fish scalers.
You did?
The hang scalers. Out of Model T Ford wheels.
Well, this is a really great idea. I like this. I haven't seen it anywhere else. I'm surprised more people didn't adopt it.
Yeah. Well, that type of boat, today it's plastic.
Yeah.
Tin. Aluminum. You take a look at these scoop shovels they're running around here with, Lake Superior. You'd get wet in a hurry.
What about your dad? When he was building boats, did he make a lot of his own tools? Or
yes, yeah. But there, too, the Virginia Rainy Lake Lumber Company was logging right adjacent to our place. And we got to know those people up there. Little Joe was the blacksmith. Oh, wonderful. What do you need, Dan? What do you need? Oh, Paul would tell me. I'll have it for you. The shoe, the rudder, and all of that. Go in his blacksmith shop, he'd make it up. He'd send it down somehow. Those people in them days seemed to be more congenial, should we say, or give cheerfulness. And they thought it was wonderful to be able to do it.
To be able to help out.
Yeah. And we had a blacksmith shop of our own where we could splice, shoe horses, and one thing and another.
Who was the smith? Was that?
My dad.
Did he teach himself how to do that, or did he learn that
back
in Norway?
Yeah. Well, no, he learned after he got here.
He did.
He worked in the woods, sometimes in the winter when the lake froze, he'd go to the lumber camp for a short time. Courage is all it needs. Don't be afraid to try it.
Whether the boats being built here on the North Shore and around Superior here were similar to the ones that folks built in Norway?
Yes.
Do you remember your dad doing anything or talking about anything that when he was building boats that you could tell came from Norway? Like, did he do things a particular way, or he said, this is the way we used to do it in Norway?
Yes, well, that was a kind of a password, you might say. In Norwegian, that's the way we done it over there, in Norway. I don't remember distinctly anything that you could compare, but they had the courage. They didn't back up for anything. The same with weather. But they knew. They'd look at the sky. They'd look at, yeah, he's coming from there today, huh? Yeah. Brown in the horizon. Uh-oh. Get out early.
The Ekmarks coming in the boat, the Coast Guard wouldn't go look for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they were fishing then on McCormick's. That's near where Sam Root is. And a lot of them went down there, including Stanley Siebertson and Little Hansen and all them guys. They had nets over there because it was an ideal spot during spawning season or just prior to spawning. And they had the gangs pretty close together. While they were down, and this day it came up with a pretty good southwester. And so they started for home, most of them. And Carl, he says, I think we better to head back. Oh, Einar says, there's quite a few fish on. Let's lift another gang. So they did. And by that time, he was really coming. So they headed back, and they got to Long Point when they headed in there. But there it gets rough in there, too. So, well, we'll go. But he says, we're going to have to bail. They had the spray hood up, but breakers would come anyway. Anyway, they began to worry about them at Washington Harbor. And the wood rush was laying there.
That was the Coast Guard.
Yeah. So Stanley went over and asked them, will you go out and see if you can help them at all? It was pretty rough out there. The mate said, I don't know. Oh, yeah, the captain said, we'll go. We can go. But he says, we'll have to tie everything down. So they blew the whistle, and the guys started tying the stuff down. They happened to look out there through Grace Harbor. They saw something come up on one of the big waves. Stanley says, by golly, I think that's them. Yeah. So he went home and waited, and sure enough, here they come. And, of course, they were socked and wet, but they came in. And after you get in past Grace Harbor, and you make the turn by Boots Island there, then you're perfect. And they came and tied up to the dock, and they smiled. And the first thing that Carl said, tell Hokie he made a hell of a good boat. And I got the message, too.
Good advertising there.
Yes. But that boat took it. Oh, boy. And she was a good one.
That was the two brothers?
That was the two brothers. Well built. Stanley said the bow in that thing is like the Rock of Gibraltar. Yeah, and of course we had the keelsons and well put together. They have to be.
And when you were talking to Tim on the phone, you said a good boat talks for itself.
That's right. It does speak for itself. That's why we were always in demand. They'd come to me, I haven't got time. Well, when will you have time? Well, we made 3 small 16-foot round bottoms for the herring fishermen, and boy, they could, pull them out of the lake. They were beautiful. They didn't pound like the skiff does, So, what a good experience. Some I wouldn't trade for anything. I'm getting old, but I've enjoyed doing what I did. I have some memories I wouldn't trade with anybody. Fond memories, good memories. And it's just like building a lifetime. If you build a boat that don't leak, you'll stay afloat for a long time.